Mark chapter 5, verse 1. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot. But he tore the chains apart, and he broke the irons on his feet, and no one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. And he shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." And then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside, and the demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." And he gave them permission. And the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs, and the herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and the countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. And when they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs as well. And then the people begged and pleaded with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed began to go with him. And he begged, he said, but Jesus did not let him. But he said, "Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Every now and then we run across these stories in the New Testament about Jesus' life, and I have to ask you, do you believe that? Do you believe that? Do you believe that Jesus encountered this guy who was demon-possessed, which, according to the pig criteria, with at least 2,000 demons, if not more? And if Jesus was doing deliverance work regarding casting demons out of people, and in fact, as I was preparing this sermon, I began to think about the miracles of Jesus. And you have, of course, turning water into wine, walking on the water, calming the storm. You have feeding of the 5,000. Actually, there's 2 different feeding events. And maybe the cursing of the fig tree. Those 6. Those 6 are the only ones I could think of that are not either a physical healing or a demonic deliverance. 98% of what Jesus did in a miracle was to physically heal people or cast demons out of people. If the Son of God would give up his throne in heaven to invade earth, when heaven invaded earth and went on the attack to go into Satan's domain, in the world that Satan had control of since the fall of Adam and Eve, and go on the attack against the strongholds and the fortifications that Satan had set up in the order of things, it's interesting that what he goes after are the spiritual deliverances and the physical healings, right? Not the cultural institutions. You ever think about that? So the question is, do you think demons are alive and well on planet Earth today? And if Jesus was doing so much of that, are demons like super rare and only in third world countries and are like in Africa and voodoo nations like Haiti, but not here in America? Or do you think that all human beings in all walks of life, in all cultures, in all stratus of the economic tier, and all ethnicities are dealing with demonic oppression and perhaps possession? I think so. Years back, I began to do a study on this sort of topic. I got some of my favorite books. C. Fred Dickinson, Angels, Elect, and Evil, super brilliant scholar. Spiritual Warfare, Dr. Carl Payne, also a brilliant scholar as well. The Red Dragon Cast Down, James Wilder, that was good. Demon Possession and the Christian by C. Fred Dickinson, fantastic book right there. Can you be demonized if you're a Christian? Great book right there. Controversial but outstanding to read, God at War by Greg Boyd. That was good. And of course, the entry-level book, The Bondage Breaker. If you don't know anything you want to start an entry-level, Bondage Breaker is good. And I like this one. This is the Handbook on Spiritual Warfare by Dr. Ed Murphy. Probably the definitive work. It's like an encyclopedia. Everything you'd want to know about every category under spiritual warfare is in this. Everybody sort of calls this the major book, the major work. If you only get one, this is the one. Spiritual Warfare, Dr. Ed Murphy. And I'm mentioning people who are scholars. These aren't crack nut, wing nut people in the deep south setting up a tent wearing their floral print dresses and running around screaming, right? But that's most you think of when I talk about demonic deliverance. You probably think of that. Or you think of The Exorcist, right? These are scholarly people. I like this one, M. Scott Peck. Anybody familiar with his name? He's one of the premier psychologists. He's passed on now. But he's one of the premier psychologists in the United States of America. His most famous book was called The Road Less Traveled, which was such a definitive work that throughout the 70s and 80s, if you wanted to get a handle on your life, everybody read The Road Less Traveled. As a psychologist, he was deeply troubled by the fact that he could no longer account for evil. He said there's certain things that neuroses and psychoses do that make people behave bizarrely and strangely, but there are some actions of human beings that are so far over the top that the only thing I can think of is that there's a supernatural spiritual force of evil causing human beings to act a certain way. And as a non-believing psychologist, he went on the search to see if Satan is real. And he concluded, of course, that yes, he is real. I have met it. People of the Lie, great book. All right, so there's some scholarly stuff for you to get looking at and begin doing the studies. And for today, I could have taken this sermon 30 directions. For today, I thought, well, let's do this. Are these demons real? Are these demons real? And the great bulk of people engaged in the spiritual side and the scholarly side who deal with Christian life and living all say absolutely. Absolutely alive and well in planet Earth today, and actually working in our culture as strongly as it works in any third world culture. This particular man that Jesus encounters, and I got to tell you, the scene is set so crazy because a few verses earlier, in fact, in Mark chapter 35, it says, that day when evening came, he said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side. So when they set out on their little 5-mile boat journey, it's already getting to be nighttime. They encountered that horrible storm, which Jesus had to calm, and we did that sermon last week. And can you imagine they're getting off the boat now after the storm, after being out there for hours, who knows, midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're getting off of the boat, finally, struggling, they're soaking wet, and they're tired, and they've been swamped, and then they had Jesus calm the storm, and it freaked them all out, and they're already terrified of Jesus, and so they get out of the boat, and they stand on the shore, and the first thing they look up, and they realize, oh, great, we're in a graveyard. Right? Because they would bury in tombs. They would take caves that were in the limestone rock, and they would bury people inside the caves and cover them open. So they get off the boat and realize they've landed in a graveyard, and ripping out of the graveyard is this naked man who is beaten, battered, bruised, and cut because he cuts himself with stones, and he cries out to me, comes running down to the beach, screaming and yelling at Jesus. I think the scene is set. It's already nighttime. These guys are freaking out, and Jesus is calm. And it's funny when you read commentaries on this, some people don't know what to do with this because they're like, well, it's a psychological problem. Clearly in the story, it's not a psychological problem because chains can't bind this guy. There's some supernatural strength. No man can hold him down. A psychological problem alone will not produce that result. And as interesting, but also you have the issue of the pigs. The demon says, my name is Legion, for we are many. And a Roman legion was a troop, like a battalion, and there's 3,000 to 6,000 soldiers in a Roman legion. And so what you have is this interesting thing. It says, this demon responds and says, my name is Legion, for we are many. It's like, that's what we are. There's so many of us, you can't even name who we are inside this guy. And so it kind of tells us, oh, okay, so here we live as human beings. We live in basically the 4 dimensions. We have, depth, width, height, and time. Those are the dimensions that we live inside, 4 dimensions. And there's this obvious call that there's this 5th dimension that is very real and very powerful and very supernatural. And 3,000 to 6,000 of these creatures can live inside this one physical man, and it's not a question of physical space. There's a spiritual attachment there. They're not limited by space. When the demons leave him, they go into these pigs, which gives a whole nother study of demonic effect on animals, and where you want to run with that. And these pigs, in some sort of ridiculous panic set off by the demons under their control, rush down the hillside, plunge into the Sea of Galilee, and they drown. Clearly, if this was just a psychological problem this guy has, it doesn't explain the pigs. There's way more going on than someone's psychological trauma. Something else is happening here where these evil, these wicked, unknown creatures are very much alive and tormenting this person's life and have total control over his life. And once they're gone, he's sitting in his right mind, he's fully clothed, no longer self-abusive, no longer tearing off his clothes, and no longer living amongst the tombs. And all the townspeople come out, and when they see the guy normal and healthy and healed, They get terrified because they've tried to hold this guy down. They've tried to chain him. They've tried to cure him. They have done everything in their power and nothing has worked. And when they see him talking to Jesus, they look at Jesus and they're like, we are freaked out by you because whatever power you have is so big and so mighty and so scary to us because we couldn't control this guy, but you can. And now we're scared of you, Jesus. Would you please go away? So the question I have is, okay, if demons are real, and I think they are because in this thing, Jesus speaks to them, calls them by name, where do they come from? If God is all good and he made a good world, where do they even come from? Where's the source of evil come from? We're going to be digging through some Bible for a hardcore. If you've got a Bible, open it up. If you've got one of these brown ones on the table in front of you, great. If you come to Gathering House Church on any kind of regular basis, I'm going to strongly encourage you to bring your own Bible and hang on to that. Start writing in the margins and stuff because we're going to be a church where you touch the Bible. You physically hold it. You turn pages and you figure it out for yourself. To me, it's a little bit of an embarrassment in modern Christianity when people have gone to church for years and you say, okay, turn to the book of Ezekiel, and they don't even know what section of the Bible it's in. Front, back, middle, I don't even know. Okay, so I want to be one church where you're going to touch the Bible, feel it, move around in it. And I want you to figure out, as we kind of go through this, we're going to dig through some Bible today. If you just want to follow along, that's cool. I'll do a lot of the reading. And where do they come from? And for that, it's going to get tricky. It's going to have to follow with me. So for that, we go back to Daniel chapter 10. If we're going to use one of these brown Bibles, page 668. 700 years before Jesus would be coming out, 600 years before Jesus was doing this ministry. A prophet named Daniel was standing on the banks of the Babylon River. He was high up in the government, and he was praying to God to answer a deep question that he had. And he prayed, and finally, one day, an answer comes. And the answer, he's standing by the banks of the river, in Daniel chapter 10, verse 7, he gets his answer. It says, or I'm going to do verse 4. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of the finest gold around his waist, and his body was like chrysolite, which is a super brilliant, reflective gemstone. His face was like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, like highly polished bronze metal, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. Clearly not a regular guy. And, most scholars look at this, it parallels so much the Jesus scene in Revelation chapter 1 that they think this is pre-incarnate Jesus standing before Daniel. He says, I, Daniel, was the only one who saw the vision, and the men with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left in my face, turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. And then I heard him speaking, and as I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Most people are like, oh, I would really love to meet Jesus in person. Well, you know, when you read the Old Testament, you see these guys who met Jesus in person. This was a more typical response. Terror and fear and falling to the ground. It says, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I'm about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you. When he said this to me, I stood up trembling. And he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. And now I have come to explain to you what happened to your people in the future. For your vision concerns a time yet to come. This spiritual being, whether it's Jesus and pre-incarnate or a mighty angel, says, I was sent to meet with you, but I was resisted by the king of Persia. And scholars sit back and think, oh, wait a minute, how can a physical human king stop an angel, right? And this has begun a lot of dialogue, and beginning with more texts and references, what has come down to the ages, the understanding of, what's happening is each kingdom, each civilization, each nation is ruled by powers and principalities, some angels, some demons. In this case, this angel is sent to answer, and the king, or the one that resists him, is the angelic being, the hostile, angelic, demonic being, which is fighting against God, is trying to resist this prayer from happening. Showing that there's a sense in the scriptures teaching that each civilization, each nation, each culture has some sort of spiritual powers that are either affecting that culture towards good or affecting that culture and civilization towards evil. That they're called in a spiritual warfare talk, they're called territorial spirits. They're high-ranking, and they're overseeing a whole region and what goes on in that region. Daniel's kind of the hint for the fact that there are these territorial spirits who rule nations. This makes it tough, sometimes fascinating, sometimes interesting when we read Old Testament verses. Because a prophet would get the Holy Spirit of God woof, on him, and he would start prophesying about a civilization, a nation, Edom or the Moabites or whatever, and he would start prophesying. And as he would prophesy, the Spirit of God in him would sometimes talk about the human actions and the behaviors of the human beings who ran that kingdom and the king that they had. And other times, right in the middle, the voice would shift and God would be prophesying against the spiritual force behind the throne. And so when you read the Old Testament, sometimes it's really interesting because you're like, is he talking about the human king or is he talking about the spiritual, supernatural, territorial spirit of that kingdom? And the stuff shifts back and forth. And there's a couple of key verses where you can see and observe this shift. One of them is in Ezekiel 28. Ezekiel's before Jeremiah, so turn a few pages before Jeremiah. Ezekiel 28, page 640. And you can see this shift. In Ezekiel 28, verse 11, it says, "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, take up a lament concerning the king of Tyre, and say to him, this is what the sovereign Lord says." Tyre was a chief Phoenician city. The Romans called them Phoenicians. We call them Phoenicians. The Jews called them Canaanites. That's who the Phoenicians were. We don't know a ton about them. Not a lot of archaeological understanding has happened. What we do know doesn't look good. They were into human sacrifice. They were kind of a dark people. And so he says, take up this lament against that king. And almost immediately you see the shift. He doesn't mean the human king. He says this, "You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God." How many folks you know were in the garden? Well, let's see. We got Adam, we got Eve, and we got the snake, right? And God himself. God's doing the talking. So this is weird. And so it says, "Every precious stone adorned you, ruby, topaz, emerald, chrysolite, onyx, and jasper, sapphire, turquoise, and beryl. Your settings and mountings were made of gold. On the day you were created, they were prepared." So it's a created being he's talking to. "You were anointed as a guardian cherub, for so I ordained you. You were on the holy mount of God, and you walked among the fiery stones. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created till wickedness was found in you. Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mount of God, and I expelled you, O guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth. I made a spectacle of you before kings." If you've been reading Ezekiel by the time you get up to this point, you know what that means. The guardian cherub is like, we're sitting there, we go, right? I don't get it. But when Ezekiel begins his book, at the very beginning in chapter 1, he is in Babylon. He's contemporary of Daniel. Daniel's high up in the court. He's leading with the Persian, the Babylonian people. Ezekiel's much younger. Daniel's probably an old guy in the 70-ish, maybe 60-ish. And Ezekiel's a young guy, and he's prophesying at the exact same time as Daniel, but he is now with the Jewish people who are slaves in Babylon. And he's by the bank of the same river, and he gets this vision and his calling. And in Ezekiel chapter 1, he gives this incredible picture of what he sees. And it's easier to describe than read. He's standing by the bank of the river, and he says he sees this mighty windstorm coming. And this windstorm is full of fire and lightning flashing out. And it's like this blazing furnace coming at him. And as it comes closer and closer, he sees that inside of this windstorm, he can see these creatures. And they have these huge wings spread out. They have a body like a man, but when it starts to get to the waist down, it sort of becomes more like an ox or a bull or a calf. So they have the feet of a calf, but the body of a man. And they have huge wings spread out. And they have 4 faces. They have the face of a bull, the face of a man, the face of a lion, and the face of an eagle on their head. So which they don't ever turn their head. Their face is just whichever way they face, they already got a face looking that way. Their wings are covered with eyes. And there's 4 of them, and they stand like they're in a box, one this way, and one this way, and one at the back, and one on this side, and they stand like they're in a box, and they move together as a group. When they move, and they're fast like lightning. And he sees these mighty, huge creatures, and inside the box of these 4 cherubs, that's what they are he sees this glowing red hot furnace and lightning's flashing out of this glowing red hot furnace from in between these cherubs going out, and they move as a group and think as a group and act as a group, and this whole thing's going on. And then as he looks, there's this expanse over the top of these four cherubs. It's like this little sky that they've got over them, and sitting on top of the sky is a throne. And on top of that throne, it's radiant and flashing, and there's a man, and he looks like he's flaming fire from the waist down and burnished like molten steel bronze from the waist up, very much like the bronze image he just sees here. And he realizes, I'm seeing God. I'm seeing the throne of God. I'm seeing the mountain of God. When the scriptures talk about the mountain of God, when you sing songs about the mount of God, it's a word picture to say God's throne is so big, it doesn't sit on a raised platform. He is so big and so mighty and so powerful that God's throne has to sit on a mountain, not just a stage. He's huge. The mount of God is equal to saying the throne room of God, the dais of God that his throne sits on. And so you got these four cherubs, mighty, powerful, huge creatures, and at their legs there's a huge wheel going this way and another wheel going this way, and the wheel's covered with eyes, and it's part of each creature has this wheel as somehow part of it, and it moves, and they move as a group, and they're all together. And I talked with a woman one time who was in cancer, and she faced death, and she said she was caught up into heaven. She got to see the throne room from a distance. I don't know if it's true or not, but it fits the scriptures. She said that what she saw from a distance was the four creatures, and they would move together, and they would move apart. So they'd become independent, and then they would become, she said it was really weird, and it explained Revelation chapter 4 to me, because when the Gospel of John, or in the Revelation of John, when he gets caught up, he sees the four living creatures before the throne. One like an ox, one like a lion, one like a man, one like an eagle. Same as what you see here. So he's got these cherubs. There's this expanse. There's this man on top of the throne, flame from the waist down, burnished steel from the waist up. It's God himself. He looks down at Ezekiel because Ezekiel's prayer has been, why is this happening to us? What has gone wrong? Why are we here in slavery? Why did Jerusalem get destroyed? And God reaches down from his throne, grabs Ezekiel by the hair, picks him up and says, let me show you. And he goes, woof, and he puts him in Jerusalem, and he sees the dark secret things that had happened in the temple. And he, woof, takes him out to the high places and sees the false worship out there of the idols that are there. And he just, woof, woof, he's going like, let me tell you, that would get your attention. You know, if you want to, God, give me an answer, to my prayer. Most of us aren't looking for that kind of an answer. These four creatures, these four cherub, control basically the throne of God. They're the ones that keep the other creatures from getting too close and getting incinerated. They are part of the glory of God. They're created cherubs. They're the highest rank of angelic being. So in Ezekiel chapter 28, we learn that one of these cherubs who guarded the throne of God, who was on the inside circle, super close to God, went bad. Was created good. Was created as the model of perfection. That means the highest order of creation. Was probably the chief cherub. Was had a position in Eden, the ultimate state of perfect creation from the beginning. We're told in Ezekiel 28, it's an anointed cherub, and it had unparalleled glory and beauty. Nothing else in the universe was created with that creature's beauty. Although, words here going, face of an ox, lion, a bull, I don't get it. Not something you'd see in Vogue magazine, but, right? One of these cherub went bad. Was created perfect, was created beautiful, but went bad. So we ask, what went wrong? To find out what went wrong, you got to back up and go to Isaiah chapter 14. Keep flipping backwards in your Bible. If you've got it open, you'll go to Isaiah chapter 14, page 520 if you're using the Brown Bible. Isaiah chapter 14, I'll begin in verse 12. We find out what went wrong with this cherub. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star, son of the dawn. You know what the word morning star is in the Greek and Hebrew if they would have translated it literally? The term is Lucifer. That's the term for morning star. If they translate it literally, it would have been Lucifer. How you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. And here's why. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. Throughout the Old Testament, stars of God is often a reference to angelic beings. You see certain passages that's like, what does he mean by that? And it's the only thing that could mean is angelic beings are often referred to as stars. C.S. Lewis would write a fantastic book called Out of the Silent Planet, and it's a science fiction kind of taking this metaphor, this imagery, that in his concept, all the stars of God, all the other planets know God and live in harmony with him. And Satan was cast to this one and shut off from the rest. So this earth is the silent planet that is not in communion with the rest of the universe. And in his science fiction trilogy, these guys escape on a rocket ship and they go to the planet Mars, where a different angel rules it, and it's got the theology and it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. C.S. Lewis, Out of the Silent Planet. But the image that comes from it is the idea that the stars, each star is ruled by an angelic being. So he says, you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the grave, to the depths of the pit. Those who see you stare at you. They ponder your fate. Is this the man who took the earth and made kingdoms tremble? The man who made the world a desert, who overthrew its cities and would not let his captives go home? And all of the kings of the nations lie in state, each in his own tomb. But you are cast out of your tomb like a rejected branch. So somehow this Lucifer, what he did was to be in this midst of this glory of God and this power of God. One of these four cherub, who was probably the highest ranking one, could look out and see the myriads of angels, millions upon millions of angels that God had created in the universe. And they'd watch them worshiping God and the power and the glory and the wonder going from God to them and them back up and through it all. And he says at some point in the order of creation, this one cherub said, I want me some of that. Instead of being content with the role he had, he wanted to ascend to the mountain. Well, when you're a cherub and you're going to ascend, what does that mean? Well, what's above you? The only thing above you is the expanse with the throne of God himself. If you're going to ascend to the mountain of God and you're a cherub, the only place up is the very throne of the Most High God of the universe. You're saying, I'm going to take his throne and I'm going to rule the universe. I will be the one who will ascend to the mountain. I'm going to kick him off because I'm big enough, I'm strong enough, I'm powerful enough to take over this whole thing, and I will rule the universe. And that's his plan. And when he has that rebellion enter his heart, because he has free will, when he stops loving God and starts hating God and starts being discontent, being frustrated, being disappointed in his role or the allotment he gets, that's when the seeds of evil start to produce in his own. They're birthed inside of him because they don't exist outside of the universe. Now, God could have taken away free will from that cherub. There would have been no love. He leaves these cherubs to have free will because he says, I love them and I want them to love me. So they're free to love me or not. And one of these cherubs said, I'm going to take over. And when he did, he created war. And the war in heaven resulted in this cherub being cast from his position of glory and power and wonder and splendor and beauty. And he is cast, as we saw in Ezekiel, down to the earth, thrown to the earth, and said, that will be your place now. No longer to walk amongst the stars of God. No longer to be in the great assembly. No longer to be in the mountain. You are confined to the earth. So if you've ever wondered how the snake get in the garden in the first place, God creates a perfect garden. How does a snake get there in the first place, right? That cherub was cast down. And it's interesting because in Revelation, it tells us that in the transformation from beauty to ugly, from love to hate, from goodness to wickedness, in that transformation, his physical transformation takes place as well. And instead of being one of the four living beasts before the throne of God, he turns into the great red dragon that you read about in Revelation. And the great red dragon is cast to the earth, driven out by Michael, the archangel. And he lands upon the earth. So we look at this, we say, okay, one thing, by the way, just a little aside. Any faith religion that you follow that teaches you that you can become God follows this path, right? So if you follow any kind of teaching of a religion that says, look, here's your goal. You can be God, as God once was, as God is, so we can become, as we are, God once was. Or if you hear, hey, the whole point is for you to become godlike. If there's anything, you can achieve the same divinity of Jesus. If you hear any religion in any form that ever teaches that, whether it be a church or something entirely different, I'm going to tell you straight up front, that is the ultimate first sin of all creation. That's the original sin. A creature saying, I can be like God, caused all the rest of it. So I'll just tell you off the top, that's a false religion. If you're following that or hearing that or anyone ever teaches you that, no, that's a false one right off the top. You don't become like God. God and God alone inhabits his throne. He doesn't share that throne at all. And there aren't multiple thrones being shared in the universe. He's the ruler of the universe. And so it tells us in Revelation that when the dragon was cast out, his tail whipped and a third of the stars fell with him, which is a way of saying a third of the angels joined him in the rebellion against God, was cast to the earth, seduces Adam and Eve to giving up the rulership of the earth, and he becomes Lord of the world. And God then has to invade his own creation to take it back through the power of Jesus Christ and the cross. He has to invade his own creation to get it back. So you ask yourself, another question would be, well, if that's where they come from, and the next question is, well, what do they want? What do these creatures want? And if you think about rebelling against God, the truth is God actually gives them what they want. God says, oh, you don't want me. Oh, okay, I'll give you that then. It's a fair deal. God's not going to force himself on anyone. So these angels rebel against him. He says, if you don't want me, I will give you that. So God takes everything that's him away from them. So where God is mercy, they become hatred and revenge. Where God is love, he pulls his love out and they get hate. Where God is joy, they get sorrow. Where God is intimacy and companionship, they get loneliness and isolation. God basically says, I will remove myself from you. And he takes everything that's him, love, joy, and peace, and patience, and kindness, and gentleness, pulls it out of them and leaves them, well, with the opposite. So they become anguish and pain and suffering and isolation, depravity. They become everything that God is not. He gives them their wish. And at this point, according to John chapter 10, verse 10, when Jesus was talking to his disciples and the issue of the demonic creatures came up, if Satan came up, he says, the thief comes only to steal, to kill, and destroy. So then you ask, well, what are these 6,000 demons in this guy doing? They only have 3 jobs. They're coming to steal, to kill, and destroy that life, just as they want to do with your life. To steal all of your joy and your peace and your awareness of God. They want to kill any spiritual life you have that's blossoming and growing in the awareness and who the knowledge of God is. They want to kill that. They want to kill your relationships. They want to kill anything you have that is good. Anything inside you that reminds them of God and the God they once had fellowship with. Anything that looks like God to them inside of you, they want to kill that. They want to destroy your relationship with God. They want to destroy your relationship with others. So you come to, well, what is their end? I think this is interesting. In this story we read in Mark chapter 5, the same story is told in the Gospel of Matthew, and the exact same story is also told in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, for both of them. And when you read the story, there's a couple of details Luke gives and Matthew gives that Mark leaves out. One of the interesting ones is in Luke, when the guy comes running, the demons are crying out to Jesus like, hey, what do we have to do with you? One of the things they say, it says in Luke, is they beg him not to send them into the abyss, whatever that means. In Matthew, they come running to the beach as Jesus is getting out of the boat, and the demons are actually crying out and they're saying, what have we to do with you, Son of the Most High God? Have you come to torture us before the appointed time? The demons are well aware of what their end is. Their end is one day to be cast into this thing called the abyss, and where there will be suffering and pain and anguish forever and ever and ever. And in fact, when you get to Revelation chapter 20, verse 10, and Matthew 25, verse 41, you have the reference that the end is they will be cast into the lake of fire, where their smoke of their torment will rise up to the heavens continually night and day forever and ever and ever. In other words, hell was never created for human beings. Hell was created for these demonic creatures who rebelled against God. And God said, okay, I'll give you what you want, and I'll give you a place to go. I'm going to give you your wish. You don't want me, I'll give you that. And when they took over the earth, when Satan is cast to the earth, they now have one mission in their existence. And that is when they go to the great lake of fire at the end of time, is to take as many human beings with them as they can before they go. That's their only goal, to try to take as many human beings with them as they can. In Revelation chapter 20 and verse 10 and Matthew chapter 25, 41, it says that's what's happening. The lake of fire was prepared for Satan and his angels. It wasn't prepared for human beings. But if human beings want to say, I don't want you, God, God will say the same to human beings. Okay, I'll give you what you want. If you don't want me, I will give you not me. And he'll do the same with human beings. So I'm left with, really, why does God let them loose? That's unfair. Why didn't he make human beings and we just are put on this planet without all that mayhem, right? Why couldn't he have said, hey, why don't you cast Satan down to some other world, man? Jupiter could use him, for crying out loud. Nobody lives there. What's he got to go here for? We're here, right? Why would you cast that creature to this world where we have to live? Why would you cast that creature and all of those that rebelled against him to this world and make it hard for us? Why would you do that, God? What's the point of that? The point of that actually is found in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 10. In your New Testament, Ephesians chapter 3, in verse 10, we're given the answer of why God lets them loose. And it's on page 870, If you're using a brown Bible, lower left-hand corner. Let me see where to back up, because the Apostle Paul has the most run-on sentences of any writer you'll ever see in your life. I'll go to verse 7. I became a servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given me through the working of his power, although I am less than the least of all God's people. This grace was given me to preach to the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ, and to make plain to everyone the administration of this mystery, which for ages past was kept hidden in God who created all things. His intent, this is the intent of the church, the purpose of the church, and the purpose of the gospel. This is the intent right here. His intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms, according to his eternal purpose, which he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. It's like, whoa, wait, you're telling me that this whole plan of salvation isn't just about us? You're telling me that there's a greater purpose in it than human beings? Yes. When Satan is cast from heaven, the cherub falls, obviously gets replaced or recreated. Another one is created, I don't know. We're not told. When Satan hits the earth and takes a bunch of his demons with him, they're demons now, they started as angels, and they're sitting there on the earth, they're cast out of heaven, and the angels who sided with God are watching this transformation take place as God removes himself from them and takes away everything that's him, and they are become what is left over. In the middle of that mayhem, that chaos, and that war, God turns to Michael on one side and Gabriel on the other, because they're the only other ones named in the Bible. We don't know the names of any of the others. And he says, hey boys, I just want you to know something as this is happening. I want you to know that I am a merciful God. And Michael and Gabriel stand on either side and say, that's cool. That's cool, Lord. What's mercy? Well, think about that. Where does it exist in the universe? In the universe, where's the example? There's an attribute of God, a quality of God, something God knows about himself that for all the myriads of time, these angels never knew. They could never discover it. And God was saying, well, I want you to know I'm a merciful God. And they're like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. That word has no reference in our world. And God says, I'll show you. I'm going to take a creature, and I'm going to make a creature to coexist down there on that planet where Satan just got cast. And that creature is going to be so tiny and so weak and so puny and so insignificant compared to the might and the majesty and the glory of you guys. And I'm going to put that human on that planet where Satan is. And when I'm done, you will understand words compassion and mercy, which don't even exist in the universe now. And you will know more about me than you ever realized could be done. This is why scriptures say the gospel is just something into which angels long to look. They're fascinated by this concept of mercy and grace because, see, they didn't see that. And in the same process, he looks down at Lucifer and he says, you thought you could take me? You really thought you could take my throne? You have no idea who I am. You have no idea my power and my majesty. In fact, my power and my majesty are so great, so wondrous, so huge, that I'm going to take an itsy-bitsy tiny creature who's like my little finger, and I'm going to put my little finger down there with you, Satan, and when I'm done, I'm going to come into that little creature, and I'm going to kill you. I will crush your head through that little creature, like I will take my pinky finger and destroy you, to show you how powerful I really am. Why did you think you could do this? So he's showing the demons his power. He's showing the rest of the angels the words mercy and compassion. And he's using human beings to do it. And the gospel radiates out throughout the universe in a huge way. And the angels on this side, looking down, they're cheering for you. They're like, come on, baby. You can do it. God is with you. Don't quit now. I know you can't see it. I know it looks blind. But we've been watching for centuries, and we have watched overcomers. We have watched people rise up out of worse straits than you to become heroes and champions. Don't quit now. Don't give up now. We're with you. Because the more you win, the more we magnify God, and the more we're cheering for you. Sometimes God sends them to hell. And the ones who fell are on the other side, they hate you. They hate what you stand for. And the more you become a child of God and the more you become Christ-likeness, they hate Jesus. They hate Jesus so much, but they're so weak they can't take Jesus. They can't destroy God. They can't harm God. So they're going to go after his next best thing, his child that's in his image. And they have one purpose in life, to destroy any God that's inside of you, because they hate him so much that they hate you in accordance. And God sits and says, hey, the war is on. Whether you think you're a part of it or not, it's on. The war has been on since the dawn of time, and the war will not end until the great white throne of judgment, and all this is cast into the lake of fire. You are in the midst of the battle, And it has been a battle before you were born, and it will be a battle after you die, and all through your lifetime, you are in the war. And there's forces that want you to win, and there's forces that want you to die. And you are actively choosing and participating in whether your life will grow strong, and you experience the life, or whether it will grow dim, and you will feel the thief steal, kill, and destroy you. That's really the big picture of the gospel. I know we like to say it is Jesus died on the cross for my sins and rose again from the dead that I might have eternal life. And yes, that is the gospel too. And the power of Jesus dying on the cross, his shed blood for you, paying the atonement for sin, huge, huge deal. But guess what? A lot more is going on in the cosmic fashion of things than just you. God is at war for your soul, continually at war. And there's an enemy who is continually at war for your soul. And all of us, by how we either run to God or run away from God, are kind of determining how the battle goes for us, right? I believe because of the shed blood of Jesus Christ, the war is won. The war is won. World War II was over once D-Day happened. For all intents and purposes, it was won. The Nazis weren't going to win World War II. Once the invasion force was in France, it was over. German high command even knew it. But it took several more years for the war to be finished. When Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead, the war is over. That's it. God wins. And that's the outcome. That's the final chapter. The question all of us have is, where will we be when the final chapter is read? And where we want to be is to have our names written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Because he'll take the great stuff in Daniel about this. He'll sit on that great white throne of judgment, and it'll say, and the books were opened, and the names get read. It's like, yep, that one's mine. Yep, that one's mine. Yep, that one's mine. That's the message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I know it kind of is a little leap from this passage, but I thought it was important stuff to hear today. To know that your life is not in isolation. You're not alone doing this little journey by yourself and wondering why it won't work. Because God is saying there's forces trying to destroy it. And if you won't acknowledge those forces and you won't understand that that's the truth of the world you live in, the very existence of the universe you're in, there are fifth dimensional beings at war for your soul. And if you don't see that, you won't overcome some of the things you need to overcome. And when you do begin to see it, you'll see the victories you need. And if you got to do homework, if you got to do research, if you got to get in a Bible study, if you got to pick up books and read them, do what you need to do to overcome. Because that's God's plan. That's God's desire. I think that's enough for today. Why don't you stand and I'll pray. Lord, I thank you for, the truth of your word. I just think back when I was young and I just had not really studied your word. I just briefly read it and I thought I knew all that I ever needed to know. And I was a fool. And I start to pick up your word now and I read it and I touch it and I understand it. And I still think I'm just scratching the surface, but there's so much richness and depth there. That you have actually explained the cosmic universe in your word, and you're unveiling it to us if we want to learn from it. I'm going to pray for us today, Lord, that you give all of us who are here a passion to know you, a depth and a power to discover the richness of your word, the richness of your truth, that we would experience the power, the pleasure, and the glory of you. Don't let us fall and become people who just say, I don't want you, God, not you. Have you remove yourself. We don't want that. We want to walk humbly with you and have you pour your love, your kindness, your compassion, your glory, your mercy, your patience, your self-control into us till we become more like you. We ask for you to give us the strength for this. We ask for you to give us the wisdom for this. Make yourself real to us. For many of us standing doubt you. We doubt your word and we doubt your power. So Lord, we can't force you to prove who you are. We just ask and we invite you. Prove who you are to us and work in our lives. This we pray in your holy, magnificent, and mighty name. In the name of Jesus Christ, King of kings and Lord of lords. Amen. All right, guys. Thank you for being so attentive. I'm sorry I was a little long today, but I'll fix that next week.